Berg here. Today we're going to be talking about food chains. So basically what is a food chain? Well, it's a simple diagram, and basically what it's going to do is it's going to show the path of energy in organisms. So basically we could say that it's just discussing who eats who, what eats what, right? So one of the key terms that you're really going to want to understand when we deal with food chains is this rule of 10. And basically what that's saying is that we are going to have a only a certain amount of usable energy that's passed on between the various trophic levels. So as from a producer standpoint to a primary consumer, only 10% of usable energy approximately. It could be ranging from 5% to 20%, but rarely will it ever go over 20% in that range. But typically it's around 10%. So we call it the rule of 10. And so this usable energy is what they're going to use to reproduce, and they're going to use to live, and that's what's going to help them move. We use energy as well when we consume food. So, but basically what happens through the food chain is that we're going to show the direction and path of energy through the organisms. We need to start with the producers. And the producers are the ones that make the food. So these are kind of your plants and such that are going to take the sun's energy and store it and make their own food. These are your autotrophs, your self-feeders. Then the next, what's going to happen is there are primary consumers. Okay, the primary consumers are going to eat the producers. Okay, so as we move through these levels of consumers, primary eats the producer. So these are going to be your herbivores basically. Then we get secondary consumers. So what secondary consumers do is they eat the primary consumers. And then again, now we move up to the tertiary consumers, and they're going to eat secondary consumers. So basically we have our herbivores at the primary consumer level. Then we have carnivores at the secondary consumer level, and they're going to eat primary consumers. But then at the tertiary level, we have a higher level of consumer that is also a carnivore, so it's a meat eater. Then what I have at the bottom is the apex consumer, because we could go quaternary consumer and such and go farther than tertiary, than the third level of consumer. But what happens is we rarely go there, because if we do with this rule of 10, what's going to actually happen is really there's not going to be a lot of available energy anyways, because if we only pass on 10%, and it's not that we lose 10%, it's that we only pass on 10% through each of the levels. So we call this an apex consumer, and basically what that means is it doesn't get eaten, and there are some species like that. So I'm going to take a look here at a food chain, and it's a basic food chain. But what's going to happen here is we have the producer. Okay, and it's actually gaining energy from the sun, and it's going to store it, and this is our autotroph, and this is what's going to, right here, this is what's going to, it's a self-feeder, it produces its own energy. Well, it's going to get eaten by this, the primary consumer, and I'll just put the PC. So that's a primary consumer, which then the mouse is going to eat the grasshopper, and we'll call that the secondary consumer. Okay. And now what we're going to get to here is the tertiary consumer, which is the snake, okay, which is eating the secondary consumer. And then we go over to what we can call, we'll call in this case the apex consumer, okay, and it's not going to get eaten. Now, this apex right here, this apex consumer, doesn't necessarily mean that it's not going to die, it's going to. But what's going to actually happen is it's going to die, and then these decomposers here, okay, the decomposers are going to break, they're going to break down the matter and the nutrients and release them into the soil so that it can actually be used by the producers to grow again. So the decomposers basically are recyclers, but this apex consumer is actually going to eventually die. But the decomposers will break down this dead organism's body and release the nutrients so it can be used here. So basically, guys, that is food chains. Very basic, and it's important that we understand the various levels of the consumers and then the role of the decomposers. Anyways, hope this has helped. We'll see you on the next screencast. Bye.